Okay, I think that we should be good. Yeah, it's definitely showing that it's talking. Cool. Okay, welcome everybody to our little orgs hangout. For anybody watching, we already have 7 viewers. Pretty cool. Thanks for the wait. Thanks for waiting. We were just getting set up here. So I'm here with Alexis. Your face isn't here, Alexis, so that's okay. And Finton from our team. And we're just going to be chatting about radical orgs today. You've probably seen Finton and Alexi on our community calls as well. So this is going to be just like a really chill hangout. Also, I need to start recording this. That's good job, Abby, for reminding yourself. I'm going to record this. So yeah, we're just going to do an informal hangout for the next hour, 45 minutes, hour or so to chat about radical orgs. I think I get a lot of questions about radical orgs, how they're used, how we can use them, and kind of what's coming with radical orgs. And I think that the picture is very clear, like internally, we have a lot of cool ideas. So I think this stream is just to kind of demo some of the things, like what you can do with orgs right now, talk about it, show what we are doing internally with Radical, how we're dogfooding orgs. Alexi, you could show your org. I could probably show mine too. And we can talk about that. And then Alexi's gonna kind of demo some of the cool new features that are coming with the web client that are related to orgs. So before I pass it off to Alexi, I think maybe I'll just like share my screen quickly. So I don't know if you guys, Finton and Alexi, I don't know, did you guys watch my ECC talk? I'm gonna be mad if you didn't. You didn't?
No.
I didn't know it was on.
Very, very, very
It was a
disappointed.
sneaky talk.
I was off last week.
Okay, guys, no worries, it's fine. Okay, regardless, oh, I can't even share my screen. Then I'm just gonna talk, whatever.
You want me to share your screen?
What?
You want me to share your screen?
No, it's okay. I can just like kind of, I'll probably push this presentation public. So I'll just like talk and people then maybe will be intrigued to go see my slides and we'll go watch my talk on YouTube. So
Post the link.
What?
You should post a link.
I will post a link. I guess I have to make this pitch presentation public or something. I'm not sure. We'll figure that out. Maybe I'll do that while you're talking. But basically I spoke at ECC, which was a global Ethereum conference that happens in Paris every year. And I did a talk on really about radical orgs, but really kind of like about building code collaboration on Ethereum. And it was different from our other talks that I've done that you guys have seen me do, because we really like honed in on like the Ethereum value proposition and kind of like what we're building with orgs. And so I kind of introduced orgs and maybe just wanted to reintroduce them now so people can kind of get on the same page with what we're talking about. But so basically radical orgs, how we pitch it is it's like a decentralized code management tool for DAOs. So orgs are basically smart contracts that allow you to manage write access to repos. And you can share ownership of this org and therefore of these repositories that are hosted on Radical with a Gnosis safe or a multi-sig or kind of like a whatever DAO framework you're using. And with these orgs, you can actually secure and anchor project state on chain in a transparent and verifiable way. So I think that this is cool for many reasons, because it kind of captures this increasing trend that we've seen, at least in like the Web3 space, which is that open source projects are coordinating their development and their operations via DAOs. And this is probably because of the rise of all these like, super high powered protocol treasuries that now hold millions of dollars that can be deployed to fund open source ecosystems in a space that is purely open source, decentralized, online. And I think a lot of people are realizing that we're really restricted by the centralized admin model of like GitHub and other centralized forges. And so not only in our collaboration are we restricted, but we're also restricted in our like organizational capacity, meaning there's like kind of a lot of liability in managing or being like the central admin to a very important crypto protocol repository on GitHub. And so I think there's also kind of this whole growing narrative around how you can decentralize your infrastructure, which is not only an important step for your collaboration, but an important step for kind kind of like your identity as a DAO. And yeah, so I think Radical Orgs is a really cool feature because it allows you to hit the ground running by decentralizing your code collaboration. And we can show you how that all works kind of in this chat today, but it also allows you to kind of start claiming your organizational identity on Ethereum. So it gives you the ability to configure an org profile with an ENS domain using our Radical registrar, which you can attach metadata to, which gives you kind of a new alternative to the GitHub org profile that you share with people to say, this is what we're working on, this is where you can find the latest code. And it also allows you to have a more secure way of verifying like software releases, contract upgrades, even like governance proposals. It's kind of just like a cleaner, like more secure way to manage code bases collectively as a decentralized organization. So yeah, so that's kind of like I think the primer for what orgs are. I mean, I think that it kind of makes more sense once you actually start playing around with it. But we basically think that orgs are going to be this like really fundamental part of the emerging Web3 stack and like the emerging DAO stack, because it actually enables protocols, applications, and organizations to like actually decentralize your infrastructure, which is super important if we envision the future of open source being run by DAOs, which I think is kind of this like general narrative that a lot of people in the Web3 space share. So yeah, we basically need to decentralize this infrastructure, and I think a lot of DAOs are going to start realizing that. And so we envision Radical Orgs being a primitive that fits right into all of the other tools that you're using, you know, whether that be like Gnosis Safe or multisigs or governance frameworks, like governance tooling as well. Like Radical Orgs is meant to kind of fit in there and be something for developers to use to help, you know, coordinate themselves within decentralized organizations, and more than that, which we'll talk about. But that's kind of like what I talked about in the talk, Alexis and Vinton, if that's interesting to you. So I can share that link. It's on YouTube, and I think if you do like a search for ECC, but I don't know, maybe I'll like drop it in the chat right now or share it somewhere else. But yeah, so that's kind of like overview of orgs. So Alexi, I don't know if you want to hop in there or if I want to pass it over to you, and then you can kind of show people, you know, what you can do with orgs and how you can start with orgs, and maybe talk a little bit more about like the technical implementation too, you know.
Sure, yeah, I'll share my screen so we have something to look at.
Yeah.
Tab. Okay. Just checking the Twitch stream. Okay, looks good. It's not too small on Twitch, right? Yeah, it looks fine, I think.
Yeah, it's fine, I think.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, Abbey explained the idea with orgs. In terms of the implementation, it's really what you have is whenever someone wants to create an org, they can go on the web client, which is app.radical.network, click create, and here they have the choice of creating a multi-signature org, which will actually deploy Gnosis Safe as the owner of this org, or the existing owner option, which means you either want to use your own address as the owner, or you already have a safe or a DAO or something, and then you can just specify the address in here. So these are kind of the two types of orgs, but essentially they cover any kind of governance you may need, because you can essentially just plug in anything, any contract using the existing owner option. And when you click create, which I can actually show you, but I'm not going to go through with it. So when you click create, confirm in your wallet and everything, we actually deploy a new contract for you, and it's the org contract, and it's a very simple contract that keeps a little bit of state on Ethereum, and this state is mainly the owner and the projects that are anchored under the org. So I'm just going to cancel this because I'm not going to actually create an org. But when you're done with that, you end up with something kind of like a fresh org like this one, for example, that doesn't have really any metadata on it. You can see that the owner is a safe. You get the little badge, and you can see someone is a member of this org. Once you want to actually create a profile and do that sort of thing, what you do is you register a name, and for example, you'll go here, you'll go through the registration process, and you'll end up with a name. And I'll just show you, for example, my registration. You'll end up with something like this that you can fill in. And essentially, you have like an avatar, URL, Twitter, GitHub, and I'll talk about the seed stuff in a bit. And this will populate your org once you've associated this name to your org. So you have to have the address point to the org and the org point back. And you'll end up with something like, well, actually, DXDAO is a good example. Something like this, where you're actually going to see that the profile is taken from ENS. It has a name, a link, and an avatar, and all that stuff. Once you've done this, you can do kind of the fun part, which is to actually associate projects with the org. This currently only works on Upstream, so the desktop client. Reason being that you need, well, actually, it's not really a limitation. It's just that you need the project commit hash and that sort of thing to anchor. And so from Upstream, we can pretty easily get that information from you. Otherwise, you would have to fill it in. But essentially, you can add these projects, your projects, to your org, and that process is called anchoring. And the way this works, it just stores some metadata on Ethereum under the org, and you can kind of see here when you're browsing this project that it's been anchored, and you can see the org under which it's been anchored. So this is my personal org, basically, which kind of works like a GitHub profile, like user profile, because yeah, it's in Radical, as you may know, the projects don't live in a hierarchy as they do on GitHub. When you create a project, it just kind of lives on its own. It has a unique ID, and so to add it to some kind of hierarchy, you need to create an org. That's kind of the organizational tool or design of Radical. And yeah, I mean, that's basically how anchoring works. We can kind of go back to the org here. One of the sort of interesting things about the way project browsing works actually is that so Radical, being a peer-to-peer network, doesn't really have a central server where you can just fetch the project repositories, right? So what we're trying to do now, so originally, they're like, we have this seed node called Sprout that you can find on sprout.radical.xyz, but that's kind of like a shared infrastructure that everyone is using, and if that goes down, then everyone's projects go down, essentially. So just like GitHub. So it's not so interesting for the peer-to-peer future. What we really want is to decentralize that. And so the idea that we're exploring with the web client at the moment is to basically, so going back to my ENS entry here, although I don't know what's going on here. Oh, this doesn't go to my ENS entry. This goes to somewhere that I didn't want to go to at all. Hold on.
I also can't see it.
Yeah,
Can you see anything? Oh,
no,
okay.
I don't know. It got lost in the void. So the thing we're looking at is these what we're calling org seed nodes. So these are like the community or the Sprout, the shared seed node, but they're per org. and you can basically configure which endpoint you want to use, which seed node you want to use for your org. And then the web client and any compatible client will essentially use that as the backend for source browsing. So for example, for my stuff, I have my own seed node on seed.cloud.io, and I've configured it here with an ENS. And what this means is that when I go to the org and I browse a project, which we're going to see right here, it will tell you here that actually this data is sourced from this particular seed node and not a shared or not a shared backend. And you can kind of see the I actually see this here. So for example, it's loading a file. You can see here that it's actually requesting, you can pump this up. It's requesting from seed cloud.io/v1 projects, and then the project URN / the commit hash, and then the path. So this API server essentially can be used to browse my personal projects. And if you deploy your own, you can essentially point people to it and point your org to it. And just kind of show what it is. Unfortunately, I didn't get to deploying the seed node that hosts so this is
The
the
client
work
one that you were
that is
doing?
part of, it's the alt clients team, but so the projects are here, but since we haven't we're still in the process of deploying the seed node, I'm going to have to use good old GitHub to show you this particular project.
Yeah. And so just to like double click, wait, I hate when I use that phrase, but like, can you just go back to the browser page for a second? Of like why I think that this is cool for like when we're talking to projects about this, what's cool about this is that it becomes kind of your new like GitHub org profile page, right? Like this is a place that you can go and see data not only associated with your Radical identity, but also like your Ethereum identity that you've kind of linked to this Radical identity. And so this is, I think, really cool for a lot of reasons, because it's going to satisfy this piece of feedback that we keep getting over and over, which is like, I can't expect people to download the client to, view code, right? And so being able to kind of then already click through and know that what you're seeing is verifiable, and you can see what's anchored and you can see by who, and then you can actually go back through the transactions, I think is like a really huge step towards like redefining what like web-based code collaboration is, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of cool that that this is basically, so anyone can deploy this web client and access the same data basically, and there's no sort of authority or anything anywhere that can prevent this code from being viewed.
Yeah, and you also don't need an email address, right? It's an Ethereum address that you're using, so you don't need any. It's like a completely platform agnostic, which I think is also really powerful to view it and then probably collaborate on it as well.
Yeah.
Okay, keep going. Sorry.
No, I mean that was about it. I just wanted to kind of show how these services work. It's really a pair of two services. There's an org node and a HTTP API. There's instructions on how to run these here, and we have Docker now, so it's very, very easy to deploy. And we're also working on having having a sort of CLI to be able to manage these nodes. And essentially, you have an org node, which is very similar to the seed node that is used on Sprout Radical XYZ, except it's headless. There's no front end. And what it does is it actually queries the graph for anchor information, and then it displays that. Sorry, it doesn't display it. It fetches it from the peer-to-peer network, and then the HTTP API is what allows the web client to actually display the project source files and metadata. And they run. You're supposed to run them with a sort of shared state behind them. The HTTP API reads from that state, and the org node writes to it. And that's kind of how it works. And you can actually deploy the API doesn't really care what is providing this data or what is managing the radical state. It could even be your upstream client. It can be the regular seed node. It can be anything. It just integrates on what we call the monorepo, which is the repo of all repos that Radical Link maintains.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's basically it, I think. Yeah, you can transfer ownership of an org. This is if you want to associate a different profile or ENS name. So you can do those things within the UI here.
Yeah, so basically in this UI, you can create an org. You can customize that org profile by setting a ENS name, which then also allows you to further customize it and enable source browsing by setting a custom org node. And then, this is a unique link, so you can share this with anybody. And so you can also register the ENS names.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, we're also working on an IDX integration. So if you know Ceramic IDX, it's decentralized metadata and identity service that anchors on chain it does it in batches to keep the fees very low for when updating profile information. And it's actually kind of similar to our identity system in Radical Link. And yeah, we're also integrating with that for user profiles, not for org profiles yet, but for users. And we're going to be releasing something pretty soon.
Yeah, nice. Talk to me more about source browsing. Where do you see, this is also a question I have, where do you see source browsing kind of going next? So with the org custom nodes, it's you can see whatever's been anchored. And then in the situation that we were talking about earlier today, if it's connected to any seed node, it's anything that's replicated via that seed node. But is someone going to be able to get clone from this web client? How do you see collaboration being built on top of source browsing and on the web?
Yeah, I mean, so the main limitation with the web is that we don't have access to your Radical secret key, right? So you can't really sign anything at the moment, which means you can't push new refs or modify your code in any way. You can only read it. So I think the primary integration that will happen in the beginning is going to be read only, and then when we have issues, then you'll be able to browse issues here, but again, not necessarily comment on them. But this is something we are also thinking about a lot. With the browser extension, you could potentially have access to a secret key. With the CLI, you can have access to a secret key. And even more crazy with something like Wallet Connect, which we've finally integrated. Which will reload. We have access to a secret key on your phone. The problem is, what is going on here? The problem is the secret key is for Ethereum, there are ECDSA keys, and on Radical Link, there are add DSA keys. So they're not compatible at the moment, but this is not a limitation. It's just kind of the status quo. So if we integrated support for ECDSA keys in Radical Link, then we could potentially sign Radical payloads through a mobile wallet I say potentially because there's probably other hurdles, but yeah, technically possible.
So that would mean that someone could say comment on an issue in the web client, and then that would be
Yeah.
published to the Radical Network and somehow.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
So those are kind of the things we're looking at. Also having more advanced anchor management through the web client. I can't show it right now, but we actually do support like sort of pending anchors and some limited form of signing of anchors through the client. It's just that you need to create the anchor and upstream at the moment, but then you can sort of add signatures to it here and confirm it and everything. And so that's another big area. It's just managing these anchors, viewing their history, who created them.
Yeah.
You know, right now the only thing you will see is whether something is anchored or unanchored. So if I actually I don't, I would have to look at a
And do you
commit.
mean you could
Yeah.
like execute the anchor? No, you still have to
Yeah.
execute it in the Gnosis safe. You're saying you can
No,
execute
you
it
should
here.
you should be able to execute. The execution is really just a contract call. So you should be able to do it eventually through the web UI also. You shouldn't really have to go to Gnosis Safe at all, essentially.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
That's
right now
kind of
the
the
flow for anybody who hasn't
Mhm.
experimented with orgs yet is that if you deploy an org, like Alexis said, via this web client or via upstream, it automatically deploys a Gnosis Safe for you if you're doing a multi-signature org. But then if you don't know how multi-signatures work, you kind of have to not only confirm transactions on your wallet, but then you also have to execute that transaction in the Gnosis Safe to kind of make it go through. So there's like a lot of steps that go into anchoring. And so being able to kind of just do it in the web client after anchoring a couple of projects myself would probably be super nice.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No. Does that answer your question regarding the source browsing?
Yeah, for sure. I love it. Yeah, so orgs, I mean, you can see I actually have put together a radical community org. And so something cool that I'm doing with orgs is I've created a community repo similar to the Rust community team repo. That's kind of like the structure that I'm trying to take. I'm going to need your help setting up a seed node because I'd like to do that so people can actually view the stuff here and then have it link through. But the cool thing that I'm doing with this is that I'm going to have this org manage write access to our Mirror blog. So Mirror.xyz is like a decentralized content platform. I don't know what their one-liner is, but that's probably what it is. And so basically to use their platform, you need to have one write token. And so you can get that through the write race, like it's this whole thing on their website. And so basically I learned that you can transfer ownership of that write token, which gives you access to create a publication domain, to a multi-sig. And then you can have a multi-sig actually manage that blog. And so that's going to be kind of like the first thing that I do with this org is that now the safe that's associated with this org actually owns one write token. So we're going to create a radical community blog on Mirror. And the blog itself is going to be version controlled. So any post that goes through is going to have to be like anchored to the org. So I think that's going to be like a fun little dog food experiment to see how you can kind of decentralize a blog basically and then manage access control to that. Did I tell you that already, Alexi, that that's what I'm doing?
No.
Isn't that cool?
It's really cool.
So I'm like stuck in the Mirror part of it because I have to like verify, I have to like link my Twitter identity to my Ethereum address and it's just like kind of bugging out a little bit, but we're almost there. Like I transferred the right token and everything.
Nice.
So this safe has that access.
Actually, I wanted to show sort of the tokens in the safe on this page, maybe.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Like NFTs or tokens or assets?
Yeah. I don't know, because I mean, obviously then, you end up with like maybe like dozens of assets or random things, but
Interesting. Yeah. Should this page be like entirely related to code, Or
Yeah, I mean,
I'd be interested to know what
yeah.
other teams want to show here.
Yeah. Yeah, it could be interesting.
I think that when projects start experimenting with not like badges, but like NFTs as membership, which is something that I've chatted with Julia from Orca about, actually. Shout out to Julia. But the concept of being able to say, I am a member of this little group of people who manage these set of assets, whether that be repositories or funds. And this NFT signifies my membership, and that NFT is either gifted to me via a governance process with like a larger entity that represents a DAO. So like the concept of like distributing reputation and then having that be related to something modular like an org, and then displaying that to show like this is a maintainer or this is this group within this DAO or this organization is another cool way that I could see what you were saying be used for, right? Like being able to show the NFTs or show the assets.
Yeah, we're also thinking of having NFTs as contribution gifts that are associated with a certain commit hash. So you contribute to an org, some code, and then they gift you an NFT that is attached to the commit in which you contributed. So it's kind of a unique piece of history that you helped create.
Could you also do that to, you know how they say top contributors to repositories? Would you be able to, well, I guess that would be like, you'd have to stack NFTs like over and over and over, like different levels or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, if it's the org that decides, it's kind of easier because then it can't be gamed,
For sure. And then I guess, this goes into how where the IDX integration goes with Ceramic, but then ultimately this page, you're also going to be able to see the metadata associated with people, right? Associated. Right. So right now it's just, if I'm looking at the screen.
It's already there.
Can you show it? Did you get it set up?
Yeah. Well, not it. It also works with ENS. So like you can see here.
Oh, sick! I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, that's taken from ENS. Yeah. And
so that's the reverse resolution with ENS?
Yeah, it's the same principle as the way as how orgs work. On my actually there is user page also that is sort of like
but this is different from your single signer org page.
Yeah, so this page actually is experimental at the moment, but the idea was kind of just to say, well, what if we just display all of the projects of all of the orgs you own? And so right now it's just one org, so it just looks the same as my org, but eventually it could have a little badge that says this comes from this org. And maybe it also shows projects from, or some of the projects you've contributed to, or from orgs that you're a member of, or I don't know. But yeah, it kind of works already as a little user profile. And right now it's sourced from ENS, but if you don't have ENS, it'll eventually also try to source from IDX.
Nice. That's super cool. I feel like people would like this or have ideas of what we could build out here. I'd be really keen to know what people would like to see in kind of like a decentralized developer profile, and what data
for sure.
in there. Yeah, pretty cool. Another thing that I think is interesting as a use case for orgs that I've been talking about a lot and referencing that I wanted to mention here is how I see us dog fooding orgs for running a grants program. So for those who don't know, we have this radical governance working group that's kind of spearheading the conversation around the deployment of the Radical Treasury, which is a community-owned and governed pool of capital. That's prime directive is to fund the Radical ecosystem, and obviously a good way to deploy a treasury is via a grants program. Like allocate a committee of people a set amount of funds that they can distribute at different times. Whatever, monthly, quarterly, yearly. To fund different people building on Radical under their own decision-making process. And so I feel like I think everybody runs their grant programs differently, of course, and a lot of times these decisions maybe happen in internal calls that are then like publicized or just happen completely internally or completely publicly. But I actually think orgs would be like a really great way to create more transparency and into like the grants process. And that you could imagine the multi-sig that owns a radical org is the actual grants DAO. And its multi-sig members are the people who, you know, authorize the transactions. I actually think some people do grants like this. But with where the org comes in is that applications, by Vinton, but where this orgs comes in is that you can actually make the application process, you know, completely version controlled, which also is already a current behavior. But you can have official anchors signal fund allocations. So I could anchor when a grant is accepted, and that process, and either I could stream money, right, which is something that we've talked about with radical funding before, or I can just do a one-off allocation knowing that the anchor is kind of backing that transaction, which makes it more verifiable. And I think that this would be really cool to dog food if we run a grants program, which it seems like the community is kind of really into that, and could be a great way, because then you can view all of the grants on this web client, right?
Yeah, no, exactly.
And it could be also a way to do like milestone funding as well, in that you're streaming funds based off of version controlled milestones that are being submitted and anchored on chain. Like, so that's a cool use case that I kind of want to explore, that I think maybe could become a standard for DAOs looking to fund people for, you know, coordinating project development and contributing to the ecosystem. Yeah. How are you going to use your org with the alt clients team? Like, when are you going to anchor?
I mean, I've already anchored.
Yeah, well, you anchor it to say these are the repositories, but
yeah,
I think like,
I mean, on releases, basically, like on new versions, I think is kind of going to be the default. And hopefully we can use that as the just the place where we send people when they want to find out about the projects, instead of GitHub, you know, as a starting point. Yeah, and then I mean, then for collaboration, it's kind of a different story. I think it's still, we're still very dependent on GitHub. So for the actual, you know, issue management, PRs, and all that stuff. But once our own tooling is mature enough, then that's also something we can start to migrate to.
Yeah. I think that orgs is just like a good foundational primitive that is, again, like a kind of like a necessary step if you are to actually decentralize your collaboration. Like, you have to decentralize your infrastructure first, you know.
Yeah. Another thing is sort of payments. Like right now we have teams that are essentially funded by the foundation in a pretty you know, standard way. But you could imagine that the foundation just funds the orgs. And so the alt clients team would be funded by the foundation via, I don't know, like it could even be like a, I don't know if this is possible right now, but, you know, with like token streams and things like that, whether our own or things like Sablier, if you can have a stream like that between the foundation and a DAO, like a team DAO, right? Like alt clients, then the Gnosis Safe would essentially be able to withdraw a certain amount of money per month, and pay its members, right? And then the relationship would be between the foundation and the DAO, not the foundation and the individual members. So it'd be really like a company on the internet.
I mean, and like, this is huge, right? Like, this is kind of like, again, this, what I was saying at the beginning of the stream is like, I think we kind of have this belief that, you know, DAOs are perfect for open source projects. That's how everybody coordinates development in the space now. And being able to fund individual groups of maintainers or contributors or people, and then allow them to manage those assets but while having the trust in what those assets are, where they're going, and how you can trust and verify that this is the group of people receiving the funds for this work, is like a killer use case, and is something that I think it solves a lot of like trust issues in open source projects and coordination issues when you have like people on the internet, often sometimes also anonymous, contributing to open source projects and then being able to be, paid for that work. And I think that I think a lack of alternatives for exactly what we're talking about is a reason why the space is kind of so dependent, like the open source space is so dependent on large corporations who have the infrastructure and the space to be able to fund all of these people, because it's really hard to kind of find self-sustaining means of self-sustaining means of sustaining yourself is what I was going to say, which doesn't make any sense. But it's really hard to be able to have that operational scaffolding to actually operate as a decentralized organization that's coordinating project development. And I think that that's still why we rely so heavily on centralized platforms and corporations to help us do that. So I think that is for sure, like that's what we're doing. I mean, for everybody listening, we just put out a post probably like a month ago or something, that's kind of like outlining the path towards increasing decentralization within the Radical project itself. So obviously with the launch of the RAD token, the network was technically decentralized, like technically. So actually decentralized. The Radical Treasury became a community-owned and governed pool of capital, and the smart contracts that make up Radical's Ethereum integration were completely decentralized among the community. And so now I think what we've been doing over the last couple of months is now trying to reduce the authority surface and the other centralized points that we have within the project, and start moving towards more decentralization with the end goal of like all project development being funded by the Radical Treasury or the Radical DAO. And I think, we've talked about this a lot, like we've moved quite quickly on it. Dissolving Monatic, which was a company that funded project development, moving to the foundation. And now we're building these primitives that we can very much so see ourselves dogfooding. And I think over the course of the next 6 months are going to be dogfooding orgs and building workflows around them ourselves, so we can be kind of like actually in, what is it called? Like in doing what we say we want to do,
Yeah.
So it's a pretty cool vision. And I think orgs are pretty important for that. Cool. I mean, that's all I wanted to chat about today. We still have like 10 more minutes. I don't know if there's any other alpha that you want to leak, Alexi. You've already leaked a lot.
Like the new way of like sharing secrets. It's alpha leaks.
It is alpha leaks for sure. Or just like saying, oh, this is, I don't know. I think alpha leaks is like my favorite phrase now to talk about anything cool that we're building.
Yeah. I mean, right now, like I guess one of the next things we're really looking into is more social features. So we're trying to see how we can, like there's a tool aspect which is very important, but then there's also the social aspect, which is I think almost as important, which is to kind of see who is interested in your work, who wants to contribute to it, have it be easier to share.
Fund it.
Things. Yeah. So really kind of connecting the code with the people. Like right now we don't even have, there's no like stars on Radical, even like such like a very basic thing like that. Because it's obviously not basic when you want to have it peer-to-peer. You need to figure out like, well, where's this stuff going to be stored? So that's always the question for everything.
Yeah. If anybody has ideas on that as well, like feel free to drop them in our Discord channel, like in the feedback channel or something. I think definitely looking to see how other people want to kind of, build their own experiences into Radical, and always looking for feedback there. So open call.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's about it.
Cool. Awesome. Well, then we'll kind of wrap up here. So thanks for everybody for tuning in. This will be available on YouTube, so people can kind of go through Alexis' demo and experiment with orgs themselves. I do want to call out that all of the things that we talked about are documented. Well, most of them. We still have to push out the document for the custom C node and all of that are documented in docs.radical.xyz. And so you can actually see all of the steps required to create an org, view it in the browser, register a name, customize your org profile, share that org profile, and do all of the things that we talked about. You can also view all of the orgs on the Radical network at app.radical.network, which is, again, the web client that we were showing, and kind of, just start experimenting with how you want to use orgs in practice. I am sourcing anybody who is interested in building orgs into their workflows. We're doing a content series with a couple projects now who are experimenting and building workflows around orgs. So if you're interested in using orgs within your team or are already doing it and want to talk to me about it, just reach out to me. You can reach me on Discord. I'm in one of the top radicals. It's just Abbey, Abbey on Discord, or you can find me on Twitter. But yeah, I think that we'll keep doing these Hangouts to introduce new features, do some more onboarding sessions. So if there's anything specifically that you also want to see, just let us know on Discord. But cool, thanks for joining. And Alexis, thank you for hopping on and demoing for us.
All right.
Cool.
Thanks for listening.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.